increasingly digital world, data has become a strategic asset for businesses, governments, and organizations. In the last 2 decades, governments have been responding to these trends, and a patchwork of regulations, agreements, and frameworks have resulted in a difficult landscape for firms and governments to navigate. Our aim is to provide recommendations on what specific measures could the US, the European Union, and China take in order to facilitate and foster cross-border data flows. On one end of the spectrum, some countries have no regulation to data transfers. Others impose ex-post accountability measures. A third, stricter approach implies conditional flows depending on the adequacy or equivalence of the country to where data is being transferred. Firms can also move data relying on standard contractual clauses or binding corporate rules. Finally, the most restrictive countries only allow for case-by-case evaluations. Data localization requirements can also affect cross-border data flows, as a prohibition on data transfers requires that consequently data is processed and stored locally.
China has 2 goals as a regulator: domestically, to maintain control over all types of data, be it personal, industrial, etc. And internationally, to build up a framework that allows, first of all, to safeguard national security. And as the Chinese state believes that cross-border data flows pose harm to national interests, it moves to an increasingly more restrictive and case-by-case regulatory approach. The EU places overall great importance to data protection as a fundamental right. Yet this is balanced with the free movement of goods, people, services and capital internally, and the pursuance of free and fair trade externally. Thus, it also opts for a stricter approach to regulation. The US model of digital governance centers on the idea of protecting free speech and free internet and the incentives to innovation, all under the broader ideology of free markets. For these reasons, the US has strongly advocated for the liberalization of cross-border data flows by labeling its restriction a trade barrier. Conversely, it recognizes that such free flows face trade-offs vis-à-vis privacy and national security. This comparison shows international trade to be the converging interest of all 3 polities. Nevertheless, trade is accompanied with 2 caveats, one being data protection and privacy, and the other one, national security. Thus, solving them requires parties to align their domestic policies over data protection and national security with their trade commitments on cross-border data flows, vice versa. Convergence in data protection is key for cross-border data flows because policies expect one another to maintain equal levels of protection of their citizens' data. However, the existence of national security concerns may support convergence in procedure.
First, we recommend the creation of a repository of existing governance frameworks to better understand the reason that may hinder data transfers. Second, policies should enhance technical and data-based interoperability among systems through the use of tools such as standardization and APIs. Third, jurisdictions should aim to strengthen human-based interoperability by leveraging the actors' converging interest in advancing trade agreements. This should include commitments to standardize rules on data protection and security. Fourth, they should continue to harmonize and rely on standard contractual clauses for international transfers of data. First, countries should explore privacy-enhancing technologies such as pseudo-anonymization. Second, the actors could agree to establish data hubs in free trade zones located in other countries of their trust. All 3 actors would have a say over the data hub's technical and institutional arrangements, and consequently deem it to be legally adequate under data protection and national security. This would function as a system of checks and balances by design, in which each country has the incentive to report on vulnerabilities. Third, countries could explore enacting courts with transnational jurisdiction within their judiciaries. In US-EU relations, for instance, this would grant a US court with enough independence to assess its national security concerns against the data protection rights of EU nationals.